When I was a kid, I grew up with a light layer of fantasy sprinkled over my sci-fi childhood. I would wander around in the woods, finding trees and sticks to use as swords, and I would go on adventures. My mom and I would often watch Willow because it was recorded on the same tape as Batman Returns and Beetlejuice. I have such a love for Legend of Zelda that 2 of my sons are named after characters. I dabbled in Dungeons & Dragons for a spell, and I begged my parents for a copy of Hero Quest. I never got it, by the way, but I've rectified that in my adulthood. Looking back, I wish I would have leaned more into the now minted old school RPG flavors. Today on the show, we're going to talk about a game that embraces the nostalgia of old school fantasy games, all while breathing life and innovation to a genre in board games.
Am I afraid, you ask? Of what? Of the dark? Of the things that live in it? Of the fact that nobody has ever entered those caverns and come out alive? Of the dragon inside who destroyed our kingdom and devoured our greatest heroes? Of course I'm afraid. So here I go.
To echo, to blow, to be silent and still, to shift, to crush, to be empty, 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 to echo.
First, Fang tribe come, very strong, very hungry. Then Bones tribe come, very small, but have very hungry friends. Make monsters. Eat many fools. Munch crunch slurp. Last Eye tribe come. They smart. They know secrets in the dark. And they hungry. They so very hungry.
I've stolen your heart, and also your wallet.
Something stinks of destiny and steel in the tunnels above. But no matter. 200 years is a long enough slumber. Time to rise, to feed, to take to the sky, and to show the world once again the fiery shape of fear.
Vast, the Crystal Caverns is an asymmetric cave-crawling adventure game for 1 to 5 players designed by Patrick Leader and David Somerville and published by Later Games. The way the game works is this. Depending on which role you choose to play, the game plays completely differently with a completely different set of goals that work against the other players nearly directly. In most asymmetric games, the roles might have a few variable powers, but this game takes that and brings it to a whole nother level, having each role having an entirely different set of mechanics to work with. And everyone has a very thematic and specific goal. Playing as the knight means your goal is to kill the dragon. Her mechanics and goals are the most straightforward of all the roles. To level up, you want to earn grit. To earn grit, you gain them by exploring the cave, completing side quests, ruining the cave and the dragon player's day by smashing the cave's crystals and the dragon's gems. The action you take as the knight are governed by action cubes you earn as you level up your grit track. The more cubes you have that you can assign to your player board, the more things you can do. Playing as the goblin means you want to kill the knight. You actually control 3 tribes of goblins, each with their own strengths and special abilities. You'll be drawing cards to muster your hordes of goblins, creating monsters that will allow you to add more special effects and rule-breaking abilities, and drawing from a secrets deck that give you some one-time use cards you can play on your turn. You will also have to manage the population of each of your tribe, because if you ever overpopulate, the tribes scatter to the wind. The goblins hide in the shadows and spawn on unrevealed tiles. The backs of all the cave tiles show you a symbol that corresponds to a certain tribe, and that's where they spawn. So this creates some fun strategic moments of cat and mouse between the knight and the goblin. If you're playing as the ancient dragon, your goal is to fully awaken and escape the cave to wreak havoc on the mortal world. At first, the dragon is unencumbered by walls and caves because it's actually rattling around half asleep underground. and as long as he's subterranean, the knight can only attack the dragon by using a bomb once per turn. On the dragon's player board is a list of powers and abilities available to the dragon on that turn. At the beginning of his turn, he draws a number of power cards that have the claw, flame, and wing symbols on them. To use these powers, you have to discard the matching symbols. Using these powers and abilities will help the dragon remove cubes off his sloth track and then move them to his wakefulness track. The sloth track basically lists different ways that those cubes can be removed, such as revealing an event tile while uncovering cave tiles, or stealing treasure, eating goblins, stuff like that. As you move those cubes to the wakefulness track, your armor and power cards you get to draw each turn will increase, and once you get to that 11th spot, you awaken. The dragon will surface, and now your only goal is to escape. Feeling saucy? Try your hand at playing as the thief. This unlucky lad has had the curse of undying burden upon him. For him to finally find rest, his goal is to steal and stash 6 treasures and escape the cave or be doomed to roam its slimy reaches for all eternity. First thing the thief does in his turn is assign their stat tokens to movement, stealth, and thievery. Then, based on their thievery number, they get that many action cubes to use on their turn. So the thief is going around trying to steal treasure and dragon gems, and then getting back to the entrance of the cave to stash them. For every unstashed treasure him makes him easier to kill by the other players, and if the thief is killed, that player will get a reward based on the thief's current loot drop level. If he makes it to the entrance, the thief will stash the treasures, and then he can upgrade some of his abilities by placing the newly stashed treasure on one part of his somewhere on his board. This will make your abilities more effective, and you will get to choose what upgrades you want to build the better thief. And then finally, you can play as the cave itself. Your goal will be to expand all of your cave tiles and then collapse 5 crystal tiles. Now, the cave player will be fairly active during other players' turns as well. Anytime anyone reveals an unexplored tile, they have to place dark tiles adjacent to each open edge. They will always have a hand of 3 to choose from when placing tiles. The cave powers are going to be based on these omen tokens. They will draw omen tokens from a bag based on the number of treasures and crystals currently present in the cave. These, of course, are the same crystals and treasure that the other players are after. On the cave player's board is 6 actions that they can do, and what they have to do is they draw omen tiles from a bag in a blind draw, and then they use those tiles in that turn. There's going to be different symbols that match those tiles, and underneath each thing they want to do, they have to match one of those to be able to do that thing. They will be sending giant bats, causing rock slides, growing poisonous spore-filled mushrooms, and basically trying to thwart the other players from accomplishing their goals. Then they get to shape the cave by placing one of the cave tiles in their hands anywhere on the map. If they have a crystal tile in their hand, which is where the crystals spawn, they have to play that one first. Once the final cave tile is placed, the collapse begins. If the cave player can collapse and destroy 5 crystal tiles before any other players accomplish their goals, the cave wins. Vast is both aggressively innovative and deliciously nostalgic. It's genre-defining must-play. Most asymmetric games that I've played and I've read about are basically everyone had a different kind of power or abilities that other players didn't, but the basic turns kind of all worked the same. But Vast brings that to a whole new level. Each role plays completely differently, to the point that you feel like you're almost playing a completely different game. And the interaction with each player is rich and interesting. Your goals intersect to thwart the other players, but it never feels vindictive or mean. It's like their causes are just as yours. Like, the knight wants to help her people. The goblins want you to be out of their home. The cave and the dragon just hate everyone else. Give him a break. It's a dragon in a cave. Even the thief is just trying to lift his curse. I mean, never mind whatever he did to get said curse, but maybe he didn't deserve it. I don't know. And you know, there's a lot in the box, too. There's a terrain variant where you have different sized terrain tiles that change rules about movement. There's other variants to adjust the difficulty, which was super nice for them to include. I mean, they didn't really have to do that. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the game this was a 1 to 5 player game. Now, how direct each roles go, they had to carefully outline what roles you can play when reduced player count. And this also slightly changes the goals of each role. So, if you have the knight and no dragon, the knight's goal instead is to smash all the cave's crystals. Or say you're playing as the goblin and there's no knights, then the goblins switch their target to killing the dragon instead. The fact that they developed all of this instead of leaving it to kind of the community to do is staggering and welcome and very appreciated. The art and the look of the game is amazing. All the illustrations are just full of life and they're just fantastic. I'm totally in love with the knight. I love that she's a young girl. I love that she's in full armor. She is like a true adventurer, and it's going to be inspiring to a lot of people. She's just great. Now, like I said, this is a genre-defining game, and it's kind of rough around the edges. The rulebook is a little rough and a little bit disorganized, and it's kind of hard to reference back to it, but seems like there's stuff missing. It's really nice that they included a one sheet for everyone to have based on their role, but a lot of the information there doesn't click until you actually start playing. This ups the learning curve and the game quite a bit. If you really want to dig into a game, and playing with the same group of people every time is usually helpful. But that also makes learning and teaching the game a bit of a hassle. Most games where everyone's kind of starting out together, you kind of have to learn the game together. But in this case, because you're all doing your very own different thing, you're kind of in it alone. There's no kind of learning together that can be had. But the fact that it is so innovative, it's also a good thing because there's going to be a lot more of this. The publisher's already working on more Vast. There's going to be more of that. But there's other projects that's going to be in this newest genre of extreme asymmetric games. Plus, I can really see this inspiring other creators and game makers in the immediate future. So if you want to get on the ground floor on what I think will be the next big thing, I would definitely check this out, because there's going to be only more like this, and you will feel like you've missed out if you don't pull that trigger and get it on your shelf now. There's a lot of replay value here. And that's going to be the show. Thank you so much for watching. You can go ahead and join the Facebook group. It's a group on Facebook. I post stuff, other people post stuff. It's pretty cool. I don't know. Check it out. Maybe you can like, share, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. Let people know if you like what I do. Let other people know about it. That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.